Anne is a life code 7 and is contemplating if moving on from her marriage would be better for the family, but is especially worried about her son. So Anne is a life code 7. Okay, and we also have, within that, we have her husband, who is a life code 211. And we have her son, who is a life code 110. Now we're going to see especially how the son is impacted by this relationship scenario.
Welcome to the Sensitive Mind Show.
Your purpose in life as a sensitive is to experience the deeper parts of the mind, to move beyond fear and to manage your energy, no matter the circumstance. I'm going to show you, as a sensitive, how you can maximize your talents and feel comfortable in your own skin. For show notes and to join the conversation, visit heidisawyer.com/mind.
What is Anne's dilemma? I've been with my husband for 19 years. We have 3 children. I believe my husband is a narcissist. After learning about this during your narcissistic recovery program, I'm learning about myself as an intuitive sensitive and how this relates to my relationships. This has brought forth conflict in my marital relationship. James can't accept my growth and doesn't like that I am changing my behaviour to better respect myself and my contributions to our family and our relationship. So what's the problem the situation creates? We either argue or we don't speak. He is very aggressive in his tone and comments towards me. It is rubbing off on the children, and in particular our 6-year-old, who is behaving the same way towards myself and others, impacting family life and his school experience. Being sensitive, I'm constantly exhausted from processing and trying to resolve the issues. So what is the question that Anne would like me to answer? It is, should I keep trying to resolve this with my husband, or would separation be better for our family? Especially with regard to our son. Okay, so Anne feels it may be time to move on, but is rightly concerned about the impact of this on her children. Okay, so what do we have? We have, in terms of the romantic relationship dynamics between the life code 7 and the life code 211. Well, life code 7, both are on the, both life code 211 and life code 7 are on the push side. Okay, so any life code on this side in terms of the 7, the 4 and the 2 are of the push vibration. So it means that it's very action orientated and it's kind of take action and think later. Whereas 3, 5 and 8 is about pause before action. So on this side, in terms of the 7 and the 211, what is their dynamic? Well, as an aware 7, and anyway as a 7, 7s are highly emotional. Okay, so everything is run by their feelings, how they feel about events and how they feel about things in life. So everything is often, well, no, I would say everything for a life code 7 is an emotional decision at some level or another, even if it's very, requires practicalities, etc. Oh yes, pros and cons lists and all of that. When it absolutely comes to it, in any shape or form, for a life code 7, every decision is emotional. Okay, not as in, but every decision is an emotional decision. It's a decision made with their emotions. Life code 211s, well, what we have here is an unaware life code 211. So anyway, the life code 211 is the male energy. So the male energy is as we see things in life, but certainly how we see things in terms of the tree of life. It's a key energy in terms of how things react in life, how things occur in life. Okay, so a life code 211, especially in a relationship dynamic, will have a huge impact on what the emotions of that relationship is about. So if, as we have in this scenario, this is someone who's behaving in a very dominant way and a way that is sort of overtaking the whole feel of the family dynamics, this will be especially strong. Okay, so this life code 211 in this scenario will be, as an unaware one, will be very dominant. Okay, so this will be a very, very dominant energy, especially over a life code 7. So over a life code 7, it's likely to be a lot more dominant than perhaps that life code 2 would be over another life code. Okay, because this life code 7 is going to have their whole experience in terms of their emotions. So this would be a classic example of where absolutely this life code 7 would feel bullied. Okay, because in all of their expression, because there's a life code 7, it's likely to be kind of a ways and means of trying to touch on someone else's reasonableness in terms of their emotions. As this person is, as a life code 211, where they are unaware and dominant and determined to be dominant, any sort of emotional expression from this 7 will be squashed really very quickly by this life code 211, okay, in order to keep that high level of dominance. Now we also have in this mix this 110 energy of the child. Okay, so what's the 110 energy of this child dynamic wrapped into this 7 and this 2? Well, this 110 as the child is going to be looking at whoever is dominant, okay, as their figure to look upon. Why? Because life codes 110, especially as a young child, kind of get torn between two different places, and obviously this isn't going to mature until this child becomes an adult, as in, well, what serves me in this physical world? What serves me as my whole self? Well, really, as this child in a 110, he's not really going to know what serves him as the whole self until he matures, so he's had more life experience. So he's going to be very reliant on what serves him in his physical world. Well, this child has spotted that actually this dominant energy seems to be the one that he thinks, oh, okay, I'll identify that as my physical perspective, as in my 110 physical perspective. I will identify with that, and I'll identify with that in terms of the dominance in a stronger way than I will with identifying with my emotions and my feelings, which is more the case of what comes from my mother's perspective. Okay, so he's going to skip into what suits him in the physical world. Right now, he's looking at it as in this dominant figure is the one that's going to do that. And yes, as this dominant figure, he will, in order to have a line of his feeling superior in terms of his security over the whole picture, he will therefore undermine, or it's easy rather for him to undermine the 7, because this 7 is going, as I say, is going to have more of an. He can do it really quickly by touching on something that's strong within the emotions. Okay, he can do that really quickly, very effectively. So he's worked out the what is actually the strength of a life code 7, which is that they can touch into their emotions. But this person is using it in a malicious way. So actually, I'm going to change his kind of character straight off to this. I'm going to say that we're going to put this on here, this pirate, because I think already, before we even look into this, that's what he's doing. He's kind of hijacking the whole of the dynamic, and hijacking this possible relationship between Anne and her son. He's hijacking it with kind of greedy emotions. And what do we see as a pirate? That there's an element of greed as far as that's concerned. So, what can we look at as far as that's concerned? So let's see how Anne can best see. I think the way to look at this is how she can best see her way forward. Okay, so how she can best see what her husband's Achilles heel is. Okay, so what is his weakness, which she can then understand more so that she can understand how to manage this dominance, so that she can then choose whether she wants to stay or go. Okay, because at the moment she has no voice. This is really, really strong in this dynamic. There is no voice, because whenever she tries to have it, especially in terms of emotions and being reasonable, this is being very quickly shut down by this bully. And I'm going to be quite clear on this. This is a bully character. This is the two being expressed as a bully. Okay, so let's have a look and see what actually his Achilles heel is, what it is about himself that he's trying to protect. So he's using these kind of bully tactics in order to keep that from anyone else. Okay, so let's have a look. So I'm thinking of the husband. I'll have a look at him first. Okay, so what do we get? We have the thief. Interesting. Okay, so he's definitely, his intention is, sometimes when you look at this, you hope that, okay, I've looked at this, what I feel that the dynamics are, based on these particular life codes, I'm hoping that I'm wrong. Okay, I'm hoping that this character is going to turn out to be something else. Well, in actual fact, the thief energy is, there is some intention. Okay, so he is aware of his character, and he is aware of his dynamic within this relationship, and he is aware that his behaviour is not very pleasant and not very nice. But we also have here, it is what is it he's afraid of being taken from him. So even though he takes the emotion from other people, what is it that he's frightened of giving, or anything like, or what is it that he's withholding? Well, it's affection. So the thief energy is often about the withholding of affection in order to maintain power. Okay, so we can see that this is the truth of that dynamic. Okay, so how does Anne manage that? Okay, because as a life code 7, sometimes it's a bit tricky. It's all well and good where everyone around could say, oh, well, this person is not very nice to you. Well, it's time to leave it, to move on from that. Well, as a life code 7, that's a massive decision, because it's everything about the emotions. Okay, that's a huge, huge decision. So maybe it's not a decision that Anne is in the right space or has enough confidence to solve right now in her life, especially with 3 young children. So how can she manage her husband more so that she can cope with this situation better, till she's in a position where she feels able to make a decision if she wants to go? Okay, so let's have a look. Let's see how she can manage in that position right now. Okay, so we've already had one card fling itself out. Let's have a look. This is what Anne's feeling right now. It's the Hermit. She needs to withdraw. That threw itself out. Okay, so what can she do? Right, so what we have here is, so my question was, what should she do? We have the Queen. Okay, but we also have what flung itself out to start with, which is the Hermit, and I'm going to use that because that's going to give a description of how she feels right now. At the moment, she feels like withdrawing. She feels like going inside of herself and quietly reflecting, because actually it's hard. It's hard to process this particular time in her life. In her mind, definitely as a life code 7, she got married for all the reasons to do with love, everything as far as that's concerned, and building a sense of partnership. And right now, she doesn't feel that that's happening. Okay, so yes, that's going to bring up the Hermit, the desire to withdraw, to try and ascertain her own sense of worth and belonging. And I would suspect that even with that Hermit there throwing itself out, would say that she's not only reflecting on her inner life, that actually this behaviour possibly brings up some, kind of feelings of not necessarily depression, but unhappiness, okay, which you would expect, but Anne would do very well to acknowledge within herself that she's entitled to feel really quite upset by her husband's behaviour. So what should she do? So our question was, what should she do? What should she do to help prepare herself to be able to handle him right now, so that she can feel stronger in herself to make a decision when she wants to make a decision, because I suspect she's not in a position to right now. So we have the Queen. Okay, so what is the Queen? The Queen is about engaging your own sense of authority. Okay, so the Queen, how do we do that when someone is consistently undermining us? How do you possibly, your question could be, well, how on earth can I engage my sense of self-worth if someone is constantly undermining me? Well, this is about building from the inside. Okay, so building from the inside, not demanding it from the outside, because he's going to absolutely, flick her off her perch, so to speak, as though she's some kind of irritant. It's about building it from the inside. And this is also where this hermit comes in, because the hermit's not only about feeling, oh gosh, this hurts me, and having to go in. It's also about quietly developing your inner world. So what Anne would do well at the moment, especially as that life code 7, is to quietly develop her inner world. Okay, so that she builds a core strength. Well, we've all heard about core strength in exercise and all of that, but what about our emotional core strength? So this is about Anne building her own emotional core strength. Okay, so quietly doing that from the inside, and that would be inner work. So that would be Anne, who I suspect is already doing that, for her to build upon that in order to build her inner core, so that when she decides that she wants to handle her husband, she feels strong enough to be able to do that as that life code 7. Now, our last question around this is, so in the meantime, how does she handle this son? Okay, this little boy who's kind of trying to emulate a mini-me in terms of her husband. How does she set a boundary with this young lad? So let's have a look at how, while Anne is building her inner world, how does she set a boundary with her young son, so that even though the father has an influence over him, that she has a boundary with him when he knows that actually, no, you go too far. Okay, so let's have a look as to how Anne can set this boundary with this little boy. Let's have a look, see what we get. Okay, so I'm thinking of the little lad. What do we have? We have the poet. Now this is interesting. So actually, to learn how to handle her little boy where there is a boundary, it's actually quite easy, because actually he's quite he's more like Anne than she realizes, even though he's trying to emulate this aggressive male scenario. He's actually more like her. So what do we have here as far as the poet is concerned? It's about boundaries with kindness. Okay, and Anne is perfectly equipped as far as that's concerned, as that life code 7 anyway, because she would choose to do that more in terms of feeling emotionally. But a boundary with kindness would be, as an example, and how you would do that with this young lad, is, let's say he's rude to her. Okay, let's say he said something like his dad would say, so something like, well, I'm not doing that for you, why should I? And gets all woo about it, and Anne feels, God, this is painful inside, because it's just another kind of stab to the heart, quite honestly, that she doesn't feel good enough. So how does she do this without emotionally folding inside or just going, little whatever, is to say to him, and how this poet would work around that dynamic is to say to him, look, I understand that you may have seen that someone speaks to someone like that, but it is truly unacceptable, and it's not very nice, and that's not really who you are, is it? You're really a nice young man. You're a sweet boy. So why do you think then therefore it's okay to speak to someone like that? It's not. So you're going to sit here until you decide to apologise. And if he's kicking off and runs off and says, I'm not doing that, where were you to tell me this? Because this is how it comes from here, is to just pick him up, put him back down there and say, I told you, you're a nice young lad, but your behaviour right now isn't very nice. When you are ready to apologise, then you can come from this step or this place or wherever it is that he's been sat, and you can come in and you can apologise. I'm not doing that. Plonk, plonk, plonk. And I would say within 5 or 10 minutes, this young lad would come very apologetically to his mum and say, I'm sorry, Mum, for being unkind. And then, if he then had praise for saying, I'm sorry, and she said, that's okay, but I hope you understand that speaking to someone like that isn't very nice and it's not acceptable. It would start to go in, this little lad, because we've got this poet here, so it's a strong indication that it would, and actually he'd start developing his whole self. From the 110 as the whole self, he'd start to develop his whole self, and then he would start to see bad behaviour for what it is. So, whilst I look at this and say, okay, well, what is the big lesson as far as this is concerned? It means that there are ways and means around people who are supposed to love us the most. You know, if we in a relationship and we went into that on the lines of that this was a partnership, and it doesn't turn out that way, and that we think, well, I just have to quietly put up with this. That actually, if we can look to see how we can engage our inner world, it then gives us the strength to be able to deal with this situation. Because ultimately, you know, Anne has to have a relationship with this man for a very long time. She shares 3 children with him. So actually working on that inner world where she has her own sense of self strong enough will then give her the ability to handle this man no matter what in the long term. And right now, this is where she's at, and that's where she can work from. Okay, it doesn't work for everybody in all scenarios, but this is how it is showing right now. So there is time for her to work with that inner world where this man doesn't feel that he's destroying the sense of who she is, especially as that life code 7. So what I'm saying is, you know, something to learn from your own life is that even if someone behaves in an uncomfortable, unhealthy way towards you, it doesn't determine that that's who you are. That's the end of this episode of the Sensitive Mind Show. If you've enjoyed it and found it helpful, and do share it with your friends, and be sure to join me next time, where I look forward to giving you an alternative perspective on your relationship dilemmas. Bye for now, and let me leave you with this. For more great free content designed to support your purchase of my book, Highly Intuitive People,
7 right brain traits to change the lives of intuitive sensitive people, please visit finallyfeelunderstood.com. There you can subscribe and download for free the meditations specific to today's episode. If you have already read the book, then it's time for you to receive exclusive access and support from me and your fellow intuitive sensitives as we go deeper together along this proven 7-step path by joining us in my monthly membership program called Heidi's Circle. There you can ask me anything in a safe and private environment, and I will answer you live. Join us today by visiting healmyinnerworld.com.